Hi everyone and welcome to Isamu Rat Care. So today's video is going to be another continuation of my 12 days of enrichment and it's going to look very much at sleeping and nesting. So this is something that rats spend quite a lot of their time doing, surprisingly a lot. It's not something we want to encourage them to do constantly because we do want them to get out and about and be active too. But it's something that is very important to provide them options to do because after all, a bit like us, they spend a good chunk of their time sleeping, probably more sleeping than they're doing any particular other activity. So what can we do to try and kind of get more out of this for the rats? What can we do to kind of enhance that kind of natural behaviour? So first thing to consider is options. So what we want to do is provide them plenty of different choices for sleeping in. So we're going to have a bit of a look at my cage here. Let's zoom in a bit. So first thing to note here is we have quite a few different kind of choices for sleeping here. So first of all, if we kind of try and peer behind the rather chewed tub here, we see that Burko, hey Burks, a little bit sleepy here, Burko and probably Tato there have got sharing a nice little cube. Now cubes are very popular kinds of bed. They provide kind of nice security whilst also being quite warm and cosy. Particularly my rat room gets quite cold in winter because I'm mean and actually it also does suit them to be cooler. So the cube is always quite popular, but I will say they don't all end up in there. There's normally like 3 or 4 of them and the rest like to choose to sleep elsewhere. So the cube is in there as a kind of like nice warm cozy cave. It's high up in the cage. Often rats do like being quite high up. It gives them a good view. They can kind of like survey the kingdom. Some rats prefer sleeping high up, some rats prefer sleeping low down, so that's something that I always try and make sure they've got different kind of houses at different points of the cage. So that's one side. Now if we look over here, and it's always interesting in my cages to try and see anything, let's see whether we can position you a little bit better. Right. So what we also have here as a sleeping option here is a basket. Now that's normally filled with hay. The rats have moved the hay out because they decided they didn't want to sleep in that basket. In warmer weather that is much more popular. As is, I've caught people sleeping in the tube before. In warmer weather they need slightly less kind of like packing to sleep in. So those are sometimes used places. I also sometimes use more open hammocks in summer as well. So let's drop down a little bit and have a look at the next level. So this is like the middle level of my cage. This is actually quite popular for sleeping in too. I find the groups tend to sleep either at the top of the cage in the cube or in a hammock up there. Or if I reach back here, we have a kind of like double hammock. In fact, you might have a better look if I... sorry. Foo's trying to kill herself. Just rescue her. Right there. So you can see what I've got here is effectively kind of a multi-level hammock here. Again, it's quite an enclosed one. For winter, that's quite important for my rats, to offer them places where they can stuff full of hay, and there is quite a lot of hay in there, and bits of paper, and actually shavings they've got from somewhere that they've stuffed in there to keep it warm. I would say if they're not in the cube, most of my rats will spend time in here, and actually they alternate between the two, so that's a nice warm cosy nest for them. You notice at the moment it's majority of these things we're looking at are hammocks and hammock related kind of things. They don't need to be. What I also use quite a lot of is sacks, Hessian sacks. I like my natural stuff, but Hessian sacks go down really well. And they can get in there, stuff them full of hay, and they really like them. It just so happens that at the moment, this is what I've got in the cage. I vary it by setup. Baskets are also quite popular, as are kind of smoother surfaces in cool weather. Right, so the final kind of option I've got in my current cage setup, if I free my hands from somebody who's very intrigued by it, we'll have to go down to the bottom level now. Sorry, Burko. Right, I'm probably going to have to do a bit of adjustments to this stand, so I don't mind if it's a little bit jerky. And we'll go right down and see the floor. So this is actually quite hard to see because it's quite dark in here, but you'll notice that my arm is slowly disappearing into a network of tunnels, which is what my kind of girls do in their base. A great example of digging here. In fact, we've just lost a couple down there. They're going down to check what I've done to their carefully constructed hives. Now this is actually probably the most natural for rats. Rats in the wild would live in burrows. and it's quite an important thing for them to be able to have a burrow-like enclosure in most circumstances. And I say most because if you've got a rat that's really not been socialised yet and is getting to know you, then it's quite often a good idea to not have too many enclosed beds in there until they get used to you. It's a good way of kind of speeding up the process and making it less stressful for everybody involved. But burrows is a natural kind of like habitat for rats. It's partly why I've been so keen to do the kind of soil experiment with my girls. Now, obviously, in my case, I can do kind of offer proper burrows in there. It's not something that everybody will be able to do depending on your substrate choice or even like your depth of tray. And I wouldn't expect that of everybody either. It's kind of like a choice, but what you can do is offer some sort of kind of low-level house. So you can get igloos, you can get little wooden kind of shelves and houses and such, and these are quite good options to provide like that kind of burrow-like feel to them. What I did in the past as well was this shelf was kind of dropped down, and I made a little kind of like enclosed bit by blocking off the sides, so it's almost like if you think of a rabbit hutch sleeping compartment. So I tried to kind of make a bit of a box, stuffed it full of hay and such, and that went down quite well as well. Though I will say my rats have always still preferred to spend most of the time sleeping higher up in the cage. But like with everything, I want to give them options. So I've got things on the floor, things at the middle level, and things at the top of the cage here. Other thing to mention is giving them a choice of nesting materials. So how about, as a bit of a Christmas treat, you take your normal nesting material, that might be kind of torn up paper, it might be hay, it might be anything, and offer them 2 or 3 other choices. And this doesn't have to cost lots of money. You can go and get some kitchen roll or some toilet roll and get a value toilet roll from the supermarket, stick it on a bit of string and hang it from the roof and watch them do Andrex puppy impressions. Something like that. Give them a bit of a choice and see what nesting material they enjoy working with. So different nesting materials will have different kind of properties. So torn up paper is great structurally. Hay is great from kind of like an enrichment foraging point of view. Toilet paper is great for making a massive mess, but they love it. So it's all things to try and give them a bit of a treat and see what they think. Right, so now Mog's licking my chin. I'm going to quickly go and have a look at a free range option for sleeping. I mean, I will say with sleeping and nesting, you are looking mostly in cage, but it is nice to offer some things on free range. So I shall just, broke my camera. I shall just stop this for now and then go back onto the free range area. Right, so we're over on the work surface free range area at the moment, and we're going to look at how we can kind of incorporate nesting and burrowing and kind of sleeping kind of activities in there. Now, rats on free range, they're not likely to get out for like really long periods of time, but sometimes they do. Sometimes you're in a situation where you can let them out for an hour or 2 or even more quite comfortably, and in that kind of situation they will want to go to sleep at some point. And actually it's nice to offer them kind of like sleeping, burrowing, kind of nesting environments, even if they're not going to go to sleep, just so that they can go and have a bit of time out sometime. Now we've got the boys helping me demonstrate a particular example here. So all this is a cardboard box. It's actually my welly box where I got my Christmas present last year. And it's something that I turned into a kind of nesting, tunnelling box for them so that they could have it on free range and feel nice and safe on it. And also actually just enjoy it because they do quite like hiding in here and tunnelling through here. So I'll just show you what it's like properly. I made it so that I could open it quite easily, because one thing you don't want to do on free range is lose the rats. It does happen, and if you put them in a box you can't get them out of. It's an absolute pain in the neck. One girl once hidden here, it took me ages to find her because she was so quiet I didn't realise she was in here. So what have we got in here? So all it is in here is it's a big box. It's got various different nesting materials, so there's some shreds of fleece here, there's some torn up, slightly chewed pieces of paper, there's some bits of cardboard, probably some wrapping paper, there's definitely some newspaper in here. I think I might have put hay in here at some stage, but that's gone elsewhere. Oh, there's definitely wrapping paper from last Christmas. Basically what I tried to do was put lots of different interesting things in. Because I had space, I also put a tube in here. That's actually a tube from a bottle of port I got. It was very nice last Christmas. And that also means that they can tunnel in and out of that and kind of redistribute the stuff in there. Now this is great because it's basically giving them the option to have a bit of a natural tunnel and dig and forage and just enjoy themselves, and a break if they want it. So if they're feeling a bit nervous, they can go and have a rest. in the box, and they can have a sleep if they want. And it's done in a very simple way. All I did was basically put in rat-sized holes. Try and put in more than one. I try and put one at the top, and there's one at each at the back, and there's one at the sides. Multiple entrances and exits help them feel safe. It's in the wild, they would naturally have several different entrances and exits from burrows to help them kind of get in and out. And it also stops anybody cornering each other if they're having a bit of an argument. And it's something that you can do with any kind of box. You do have to make it adjustable for the size of the rats, but we recently fitted a garden hose. That was today's job. And I just thought this box would be absolutely perfect for babies for a nesting point of view. All I'm going to do is fill this hole with a load of hay and shredded paper, and then we'll see what the babies make of it. I don't actually need to do anything for that because it's got the holes. Now, I couldn't use it for adults because it is quite narrow there, but for the baby size, it's perfect. And it really is. If you've got a shoebox, that's an ideal kind of like free-range nest box for the rats. Just cut a couple of holes into it, stuff it full of interesting things, and leave them to it, and then just leave it somewhere in free range, out of the way. This goes underneath my work surface, so that they can come and go as they choose, really. And it's just nice for them to have those kind of options. So that's probably it from this video. I feel like I talk too much on most of these videos. I do want to make them quite reasonably short for people, so you don't like lose your Christmas holidays to them. So that's one from me. Basically, in summary, just make sure in the cage that you provide lots of options. Think about doing things at the top of the cage, the middle of the cage, and the bottom of the cage. Try and respect their burrowing instincts, but also respect the fact that not all rats choose that from a bed. A lot of them like these high up perches. Offer different nesting materials, and try offering something completely different that you've never used before. Things like toilet roll, kitchen roll, etc. that might be a bit of fun for them, or hay or straw if you've never used that before, as long as you're getting it from a good source, nice industry and kind of no mould or anything like that in it. I'll move that before Sol has an accident. And that's the main thing, and in free range, offer them at least one kind of option for going to somewhere to kind of like have a bit of a break, have a rest, and maybe even have a sleep. And again, it doesn't need to be expensive. Convert old bits of junk. One thing that I'm really determined people realise with rats is there's some things that are worth investing lots of money in, like a really good cage, a really good wheel, that kind of thing. But the majority of stuff is far better if you just kind of like make it yourself, or adapt things that are not necessarily designed for rats, because a lot of what they sell for rats is a bit rubbish. But that's one for you to have a go at. Now I best kind of wrap this up because some rats are trying to climb up my legs, so the girls are trying to visit the boys, and that would be a bad idea at this stage. So over and out.